Yeah. True story, you dealing with the best in chess. Fish gang, where you at? Time to represent. Coach, show them how we run it. It's time to do it big. Let the world stream live. You can find him on Twitch. Right from the opening until he holla checkmate. Coach keep it entertaining, yeah, all day. Some people donate, some try to hate. Tell them don't hide. Check them online, chess.com. Yeah, that's where it goes down. He don't see no competition every time he look around. People yelling true story, sounding like Coach. If you ready, come rock with him. You know how it goes. Hey, yeah.
Greetings 1300 Club. Today's video is on Ask Your Opponent Questions. We're going to be looking at this game from the black perspective, and we want to find ourselves that when we make our moves, we want to ask our opponent questions. So we're not going to be spending a lot of emphasis on opening, but we will be looking at opportunities to play forcing moves or moves that question what your opponent is doing. So in this case, white played d4, black played g6, nothing terribly wrong here. And then white played d5 right away. And this move is a little bit questioning, but it does allow for black's dark square bishop to get very active very quickly. Yes, this move will challenge the development of black's d8 knight. However, at the cost of making the FAG7 bishop very strong. So right away, I would argue that, white has given up some advantage. And then black responds with d6. I think this is an unnecessary move. This pawn is not going anywhere further. So he should probably just develop his bishop right away and possibly play knight f6 to try to make sure that there's going to be some emphasis over e4 square. But anyway, the game continued. d6, I guess he was intimidated by this pawn moving forward, even though the pawn would be running into the potential attack of other pawns protecting that square. So now white has played e4, natural move. The bishop goes to g7, everything's fine. Knight f3. And then again, black seems to be a little bit concerned about the location of these pawns, and there's no reason for him to be overly concerned here. He should be trying to get his pieces developed. So one of the things that we'll be talking about in other videos is king safety and the principle of ABCs of chess. Activate your pieces, be safe with your king, centralize your pieces. You should be focusing on getting your king safe before attacking your opponent. And I consider this move an attacking move because it's challenging, white's control over the center a little bit prematurely. This control could potentially open up attacking lanes on black's king very quickly before it has been defined how we're going to continue. So okay, finally black has gotten castled, and look at the development, rapid development of white's pieces. I'm not a fan of some of white's other moves, but I do like the fact that white has 4 minor pieces developed. His king is getting ready to get safe. His queen is already active, and the only piece that is not really doing anything at the moment is the a1 rook. So, white is doing very good for himself in this position, whereas black, because of, I believe, in this example, these 2 pawn moves, has missed the opportunity to, get active. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to look for opportunities to ask your opponent questions. So we continue. Black develops his knight bd7, castle, and then we start attacking the base of the pawn chain, which is not a bad idea. Let's see how it continues. Not a bad idea. He slides over, protecting the pawn twice. And then black challenges the bishop. In this particular case, I probably would have been tempted to continue development with my bishop to g4. That's my inclination. This pawn move is challenging, and it does ask your opponent questions because he doesn't have time to do anything else. So, that's the point of the video is to look for these kinds of moves. So I can't be mad. I'm not terribly excited about this opportunity, but it does do the theme of the video, and it does ask your opponent questions. So for if you're hearing this for the first time, this is the kind of move that asks your opponent questions. It freezes the activity of the board right now and says, hey, what are you going to do with your bishop? Because obviously you're not going to leave your bishop standing there. And even if you do, and play something like bishop takes knight, we just capture the bishop and you still have the original question what happened with the bishop, the C4 bishop. So this is an example of asking your opponent questions right away. The bishop retreats, cutting off a defender of the E4 square. So now we can attack this twice, and that has to be advantage black. And he does capture it, and he captures it in such a way where he adds pressure onto the piece that was attacking his knight, and that's the G5 bishop. Not terribly excited about that, but okay. That's what he chose to do. Oh, I know why I'm not excited about that. The reason I don't like this move is, black might decide to, attack the knight complex. These two knights are in a relationship, and if you attack the weaker one, then this E4 knight could be in trouble in some lines. Naturally, he's going to start snapping and trying to get out of trouble. But in this particular position, he has some choices, but you have to be careful on when you just put your pieces in harm's way. The game continued. He just simply took capture. Then the bishop retreated because I guess he decided he wanted his bishop. Some people favor the bishop pair, whatever. And then black retreats. No comment. White develops his bishop to the D3 square in the vicinity of this knight. And don't forget, this pawn is also doing a job here. And then there's also tension in the middle of the board. So he snaps and exposes the double attack fork idea on the queen and the rook. Now, this was a little bit nasty. And I'm just looking at this again for a different perspective. Bishop took. Now, we already took a bishop. So I think, let me just calculate this again. I think there's a line where black could give up the queen by just simply playing knight takes rook, bishop takes queen, knight takes knight check, and then queen takes and rook takes knight. And then we have a queen and a rook versus two rooks and two bishops. I think that's a move. In fact, this is probably the direction I would have gone. But anyway, he reacted and played knight takes pawn instead of a piece, trying to counterattack the queen, and the queen simply got out of the way. Threatening the discovered attack. This is really not a serious threat because the queen is already hitting that knight, and the knight's going to do what? That knight is to
sleeps with the fishes.
Goodbye. So in this position, he does have the opportunity to save his rook, however, because the queen is protected. So black would have been doing okay for himself. He's not really down any material, but he chose to capture the queen, then move the rook. Trading pieces is not what I would have done, especially leaving your back rank vulnerable here. Snapping that pawn is extra, doesn't challenge the opponent. Maybe he wants to develop this bishop, say to F5, and threaten to take two pawns, and at the same time give some defense to his back row. Maybe. He snaps a pawn, gets checked again. A trade is happening. But in this position, we have to note that not only is black being held up on his 8th rank, The knight is an intruder, and there's another pawn that's coming off the board. In fact, white can choose to run this way and win more material. So this is not what you want. Black does ask a question. He says, what are you going to do with this knight? Says, I'm going to take your pawn. Attacks the rook. It gets checked. Pushes the pawn. This is all bad. Bad news bears. Now, I think here he should take the time out to wait. Because, I mean, if almost any move is losing in this position anyway. But if, let's just say we do a random move. Black's move, yeah. So let's just do a random move. Here, if this pawn push, we can go here, right? If he queens, we can just take the queen. Now he's got a choice. If he takes our rook, we take his rook. Yes, he's going to take our bishop and be looking happy. But it's not the end of the world. But it's just an idea. Not the end of the world, just an idea. I think it's better than what actually happened in the game, which was randomly dropping the bishop. D6. Goodbye, bishop. He doesn't take it. Tried to challenge the rooks. Now he takes the bishop, and then it's just game over. So the opportunity here in this game, and I'll just flash back through it, was a little bit reactionary on Black's part. There was just too many opportunities where Black was just playing reactionary chess. For example, when White played d5, he just pushed a pawn randomly, having nothing to do with anything. This pawn is not harmful. Be getting his pieces out. He played c6 unnecessarily, another wasted opportunity. That was the first ask your opponent questions move when he played b5. Not a fan of taking with the F knight. I think taking with the C knight would have been better. Retreating for no reason here is probably suspect. I think we could probably even push past. Push past is probably what I would have done. But maybe, I don't know. What would I have done? Oh, maybe bishop takes pawn, asks a question. Bishop takes pawn, asks a question in this position, guys. I just saw it. Bishop takes pawn right now instead of retreating. Right? If here, then we have this bingo. Can't even take the bishop. I think that's the move. So anyway, looking for forcing moves, trying to avoid moving backwards. These are all themes that we're going to hear over and over again in these videos. Thank you so much. I think I've gone over my 5 minutes, but we'll see you again in the next video.